We are born free.
And we will die free.
The time in between, though,
That's complicated.
in that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Odermatt.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. And I got a great episode lined up for you today. Really interesting stuff. And honestly, you're not going to hear content like this many other places. Today we're going to be talking to a Catholic priest, an actual exorcist on Halloween. I don't know if it gets any better than that. I just want to remind you, if you enjoy this content, please subscribe to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Subscribe to the Finding Freedom solo feed if you just want to get my shows, or if you just want to share my show and this show specifically, you can share from the Finding Freedom solo feed. Just search Finding Freedom John Odermatt and it'll pop right up. I don't want to waste a lot of time. Just want to get to this interview, so let's roll with it. All right, we are live, and I am joined here by Msgr Stephen J. Rossetti. He is the president of the St. Michael Center for Spiritual Renewal and a research associate professor at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. He's a licensed psychologist and the author of several books. Msgr Rossetti has participated in hundreds of exorcisms. During his journey to priesthood, he experienced a spiritual episode in which, and I quote, he says, "In 2 seconds, I learned 80% of what an exorcist needs to know." Monsignor, welcome to Finding Freedom.
Thanks, John. It's great to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you on the show, and this is the second episode in about a month or 6 weeks or so that we've talked about exorcisms. And, this is a show where we talk about all different manners of finding freedom, be it financially, entrepreneurship, spiritually, and especially, this time of year with Halloween happening, this airing on Halloween. This is the type of thing that does come to people's mind. Obviously, a very, very serious topic. I myself, I'm a Christian. I'm not a Catholic. I definitely do believe in the devil. I believe in good and evil, and really interested in learning more about exorcism. But first, before we get to that, I want to learn about you, and I want my audience to learn your background and really your story. So maybe a good place to start is at the beginning. What brought you into priesthood, and what was your journey into the priesthood?
Well, that's a complicated question, but I am a graduate of the Air Force Academy, and I spent 6 years in the Air Force, a wonderful time. And next year is our 50th reunion, so I'm looking forward to that. So I served happily in the Air Force, and I'd always been kind of a religious kid, but I felt more and more strongly called. I think it was just a calling. I mean, I was praying more. I was doing holy hours. And I just felt drawn to that. I actually spent a short amount of time as a Carthusian monk too, which people don't know that, but they're hermits. And it's a wonderful life of really prayer and solitude with the Lord. And that was really very formative in my spiritual life. Still is. I'm a closet monk. But then I got a little claustrophobia, with fear of the cloister, And so I went to diocesan priesthood, and I've been a diocesan priest now for 38 years. So we're served in 2 parishes. Became a licensed psychologist. I spend most of my time in priesthood serving as a priest psychologist, and most of the time helping priests and nuns who have had psychological problems. And only my last iteration, if you will, hopefully last, is that now I'm an exorcist as well as a professor.
And this drawing to becoming an exorcist. You tell the story in your book. Can you go through
Sure.
what I referenced in the introduction there with the 2 seconds? You learned 80% of what it takes to be an exorcist.
Right. Well, I mean, I wasn't an exorcist. I was a seminarian, of course. And I was lying in bed. I was not asleep. And all of a sudden, wham! I mean, there was this incredibly powerful and lightning fast evil force attacking me. And by the grace of God, I knew exactly what it was, even though it's never happened before to me. I was attacked by the devil, and I knew that I was going to be overwhelmed. And so I all of a sudden flashed in front of my brain that my rosary beads were down at the bottom of the bed. So I lunged out of bed, grabbed the rosary beads, and the minute I grabbed them, it left. And that pretty much taught me what you need to know as an exorcist, that the devil, do never go mano, face to face with the devil. He's much more powerful than you are personally and moves with the speed of thought, lightning fast. And so, but I reached out to Our Lady and a Blessed Virgin, the Mother of Jesus, and thus the power of Christ, and instantly the devil was dust and gone. And that's what we do as an exorcist. It's not me, it's Jesus ultimately who casts out Satan. Is Jesus, you're a Christian, is Jesus in the gospel who crushes Satan's kingdom. And so that's all I do. Is the devil oftentimes in exorcisms will want to goad me into sort of a mano. If I don't fight with the devil, I said, I'm not your problem. I said, I'm not your problem. Jesus is your problem. And in Jesus' name, I command you to leave.
I think a question that people ask, and when I had on the previous episode where we talked about exorcisms, a question I got was, why does God allow this to happen? And you talked about Satan and demons moving at the speed of thought. Why does God allow us to be tempted by evil?
Well, it's a larger question. Why does God allow evil to begin with? I mean, there are a lot worse things than those. I mean, think of all the horrors that are going on in Ukraine. Why does God allow that? Why does God allow adults to murder and rape children? I mean, these are horrible crimes. And why does God allow that? Well, the short answer is that God gives us freedom. He lets us choose. And if we can't choose, then we can't love, because we're not slaves. We freely choose to love God and love our neighbors. So God gives us a real choice. And ultimately, that choice will land you in heaven or hell by what you choose.
Kind of related to that question, God does give that choice, that freedom, but these demons and Satan are on somewhat of a leash, if that's I think that's the terminology you use in the book.
Yeah. There and that's good news that the Lord allows them to tempt us, and as many saints witness in their lives when Satan. First of all, John, as you know, Satan tempts all of us. Tempts you, tempts me, tempts all of us. Most of us are not possessed, but Satan tempts us, and so and when we overcome those temptations, we grow in grace and we get stronger in the spiritual life. So those temptations that God allows are moments of sanctification. But Satan's on a leash. In exorcism, they'll always say things like, we're going to kill you, we're going to maim you. I get this all the time in exorcism, and it's just not true. I mean, God does not allow the demons directly to kill us or maim us. He can torment us a bit, but Satan's on a short leash.
So let's get into what is demonic possession. How does it happen? How do people find themselves in a situation where they are possessed by demons?
Well, first thing I would say would be there's a lot of people who don't believe in it. Fine, whatever, that's their business. But as Pope John Paul II said, if you don't believe in Satan, then you don't believe in the gospel. An honest reading of the gospel, whether you're a Baptist or an evangelical or a Lutheran or a Catholic, an honest reading of the Bible shows that Jesus, certainly believed in exorcisms, and the Bible is shot through them. So it's de fides. It's of the faith if you're a Christian. But most of the time, right? The difference between Satan's ordinary activity and his extraordinary activity. His ordinary activity, as I said, he tempts all of us, and we all get tempted by the devil. His extraordinary, sometimes he's allowed by God's will, allowing it to oppress and even sometimes possess people. Now, he doesn't control their wills, but he can control their bodies and jerk them around emotionally as well. So typically, when that happens, I tell this somewhat ironically to people. I say, look, I've got a 3-step process. You want to get possessed? I give you a 3-step process getting possessed. Works every time. Number 1, stop practicing the faith. Our Christian faith, as Ephesians 6 tells us, is our shield. God is our shield. Christ is our truth. Christ is our sword. So when you stop practicing the faith, you take off your armor. So stop practicing the faith. Number 2, if you want to get possessed, start committing serious sins. That creates a wound and starts creating some vulnerabilities. And then step 3, if you want to get possessed, start doing occult stuff, practicing witchcraft, practicing magic. There's this Halloween stuff we're talking about. You start practicing witchcraft, magic, and you keep it up. You keep it up for a while, and eventually you're going to have a problem.
So the types of people that, or I should say, those who come to you for help, who are possessed, is this something, you've talked about the 3-step process, is this something that, maybe they've been living a life for a long time like this, or is this something that can happen rather quickly?
Well, I mean, this is not a mathematical. I would say there are 2 basic things. People can get possessed by what they did themselves, or sadly, people can get possessed by what was done to them and not their own fault, which again seems unfair, but people do bad things to kids all the time. It's not their fault. And for example, we have a young woman we're praying over right now. Her father was a Satanist. Her mother was a witch. They dedicated her to Satan. Now, the good news is she rejects it, but she's possessed. I mean, they gave her to Satan, and but now Christ claims her. She's in the process of getting freed. So possession can be results of their own weaknesses and sins, or it can be something that was done to them.
So I think when people think about possession, they think about the movie The Exorcist. They think about the image of that girl, sitting straight up in bed and making those noises. Are these the types of characteristics that you see in a person who is possessed? What are some of the most crazy things, for lack of a better term, that you've seen, or anyone that you can share, I guess I should say, that you've come across that really made you open your eyes?
Well, The Exorcist, the movie in the 70s, was actually based on a real case. And the notes of the Jesuit who did the exorcism are available now in a book. I bought a couple copies of the book, and it's a great reading it for an exorcist, because you see his notes and exactly what happened. And you say, oh yeah, I've seen that. It was a classic case of possession. And the kid was using a Ouija, as a young lad, and the kid was using a Ouija board for months. He got possessed, of course he did. And the good news was he was liberated by the grace of God. St. Michael, the archangel, showed up and liberated him. And he went on to live a happy life, a holy life. He just died a few years ago. So he lived a good life, and he's gone. But yeah, I mean, it's based on a real case. Now, I've actually never seen the movie. I don't need to. I get too much of it. I don't need to see the movie. And I know this. I see little snippets of it. And I mean, there's some Hollywood stuff. People's heads don't spin around, And
Right.
and I think the priest supposedly died at the end of the movie. The priest who did it didn't die. He lived a long life. So I was recently told that one diocese doesn't want to have an exorcist because they're afraid that the priest might die. And I said, that's nonsense. That's from the movie. Jesus protects us. Satan's always threatening me. I just
Is it common for sorry to interrupt, but is
yeah,
it common for most dioceses to have their own exorcist?
supposed to. The Holy
Yeah.
Father said every diocese in the world is supposed to have one. I would say in this country, slightly more than half have one, but some don't. And frankly, it's creating a problem for the rest of us because people from their dioceses are calling us.
Hmm.
So I wish the bishops would all appoint and train an exorcist.
So there's different degrees of demonic possession, right? You talk about in the book. There's weak and there's strong. There's being possessed by, I guess, sub levels of demons, and then there's the if getting possessed by Lucifer himself, right?
Right.
So can you kind of talk through how that works? Because that's hard to even comprehend, honestly.
Well, first of all, understand the angelic world. Angels are in a hierarchy. There's 9 choirs of angels, and the highest angel is more stronger and more powerful than
Hmm.
the weakest one. Now they're all beautiful spiritual beings and live in the Lord's presence, but there is a hierarchy among them, and they kept that hierarchy when they fell and went to hell. So Lucifer is in charge of them of hell, and he has a bunch of lieutenants, Beelzebub and Baal and Baphomet and all those the cast of characters, and it goes all the way down to the lesser ones. And so, some people have varying degrees of demons. I remember one case, I commanded them to tell me how many demons were there, and they said, "Well, Rossetti." They call him Rossetti. Rossetti said, "There's too many of us, and we're too deep." There were about 800. I think there's 840 or something in that case, but they all went eventually, of course. Uh, but there are varying levels. Some people possessed by more demons, some less, some higher demons, lower. So sure, the cases are all different.
In today's world, people throw around the term evil. Um, you know, speaking of wars, speaking of different terrible acts that happen that we see in the news, people being murdered, raped, all these different things. Um, Even atheists, I've atheist friends who recognize that there's evil in this world, and I'm just curious when you hear this kind of is going pivoting off of exorcisms for a little bit, but kind of related, I think. Just jumped to front of mind, so I figured I'd ask you. Don't often get a conversation with a priest, so how do you address someone like that if you come across someone like that recognizes evil, but they're not a Christian and they don't recognize the opposite to evil? They don't recognize Jesus. They don't recognize the truth.
Well, that's interesting because today you find a lot of people who either don't believe in God or kind of agnostic, but they
Hmm.
believe in the devil. I was exercising one
Exactly.
woman who was not a Christian. But we did do a successful exorcism over her. And I told her, we're going to exorcise you in the name of Jesus. She did fine, but she didn't really, really believe in him, frankly. But she knew she had demons. I mean, but she didn't believe in God. And I'm thinking,
Really?
yeah, I'm thinking going, well, if you believe in demons, then you believe in a spiritual world. Where do you think these demons came from? They make themselves? I mean, that.
Hmm.
So I think what happens is people don't think very much about these issues and don't think very clearly about them. We have a lot. I mean, I was exercising. We have one woman we're exercising right now who was a Catholic and a Christian, fell away, started practicing on a pagan religion, and we're going, what? You went from worshiping the one God to worshiping a whole panoply of
Hmm.
pagan demons, all these pagan gods. Oh, heaven full of a whole bunch of warring, with they gave that up 2,000 years ago with
Hmm.
the Greek and Roman gods, and now you're falling back into it. I mean, it just, as the French would say, incroyable, unbelievable. It just makes no sense.
Yeah. So that case you were talking about with the woman who is an atheist and believed in demons and being
Mm.
possessed and understood she was possessed, I assume, but didn't believe in God. Are you able to exorcise the demons through the name of Jesus if the person is an atheist and not accepting of God?
That always first of all, the demons will leave when God tells them, when God's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he was particularly generous to this woman. I think through this, he was calling her to be a believer. I think she kind of was thinking about it. I think that this experience, of course, kind of opened her eyes a bit.
Mm-hmm.
She was appalled when she found out she was possessed, but she had a whole pagan background that invited him in. So, I think that it can be, ironically, having demons can be a grace in the sense of calling you to rely on a higher power, as we say, relying on the Lord. So, in this case, it did work. It only took 6 months, which is pretty fast for a full possession case. So I think God was really lenient and merciful with her.
That was my next question, actually. So you said this case took 6 months. So what's the gamut? I mean, can possession be rectified within a couple of days, or does it typically take that duration of time, weeks and months, in order to?
Well, it depends on what the situation is. And remember, as you implied earlier, that there are varying levels. There's if someone is fully possessed, all the way over to a very minor possession, or what we call an obsession or oppression. So some demonic influence, but not a full possession. Most of the people come to us who have demons are not fully possessed. They have some demonic influence, but are not possessed. We generally oppressed or obsessed. Mm-hmm. And, I'd say about, 3 to 7 sessions, they're fine. But when someone's really possessed, if we get done in 6 months, we're really happy. Typically it'll take at least 6 months to 2 years, and sometimes longer. We had one case that went 5 years. So you just never know exactly how long it takes.
You referenced sessions, 6 or 7 sessions. So what typically takes place during a session?
Well, people should sign up for our monthly online deliverance sessions, and you'll experience it. Now, the online sessions are not solemn exorcisms, but they are a lesser deliverance prayers. So once a month. Next one's November 28th. We just had one last night. We do an online deliverance session, and in there you go through the whole process of what the prayers are, and people find them very powerful, very healing. They can register at CatholicExorcism.org. So www.CatholicExorcism.org, and they won't be able to register for a couple of days. We'll put this new site up in a few days. But we had 12,000 people sign up for last night's session. Wow. So it's a real need. But we essentially, what an exorcism or even deliverance prayer is in this case would be a priest with faculties in an exorcism saying the rite of the church, the rite of exorcism over the person. And I would say, half an hour to 2 hours would be a typical session.
Okay. So one more question here. So this time of year, today is Halloween. This is airing on Halloween. Do you see an uptick in possessions, or is there any time of year or certain events that do lead to, seeing more of an uptick in possessions?
Well, those are involved in the spiritual world, especially the dark world, like we are in terms of our prayer. Halloween is a time of evil. It's what we call a demonic inversion. Lucifer takes holy things and twists them to mock the Lord. For example, Black Mass takes the holy thing of a Mass. They usually steal a consecrated host and desecrate it in Black Mass. Or the demonic hour. 3 a.m. is a typical hour of rampant evil compared to 3 o'clock in the afternoon when Jesus was crucified. So Satan takes those and twists them. Or many times where people possessed, they'll be burnt, like when one of them burned on their neck, a 4-inch upside down cross. Satan saying, this person belongs to me. Again, twisting. something holy like the cross of Jesus. Halloween is a perversion. All Hallows Eve. It's the eve of a beautiful feast called All Saints. November 1st is the feast of All Saints. So Satan takes that and kind of is somewhat more rampant, frankly, on Halloween. And for example, witches will often gather on Halloween and do their coven thing, curse thing, sadly. And we've experienced quite a bit of demonic stuff on Halloween, more so than normal. And so what we do is we pray. We're going to have a holy hour, and we're going to pray in the beautiful feast of All Saints.
Okay, I said one more question, but I just thought of another one. I think this will be a quick one. So I think it's important to reference this too. You talked about earlier the three ways if somebody wanted to get possessed. Hopefully, no one does who's listening to this. But the three ways that you could almost guarantee that. What are ways that people can protect themselves from
First
demons?
of all, as I said, Ephesians 6. God and Jesus are our shield and our truth. So practice the faith. And we say trust in Jesus. I mean, obviously we're Christians and Catholics. And so trust in Jesus, practice the faith, number one. So you reverse those three steps. Stop doing the magic thing. Stop doing occult stuff. Stop all that astrology and all that stuff. Stop it all. Tarot cards, the whole thing. Stop that. And stop sinning, of course. For Catholics, we recommend you go to the sacrament of confession. It's a beautiful sacrament. And then practice the faith. And we, of course, use also what we call sacramentals. We use holy water, which really does cast out those demons. We use it. We have a crucifix like above my shoulder here. And so we use holy objects to sanctify a place.
Okay. Well, that's good advice, good information. Before I let you go, can you tell people how they can? I know we talked about pre-show. You have quite a following. So where people can find you, where they can find previous podcasts you've been on, previous content, your books, all that good stuff.
The easy thing is to go to our website. We have an app too. The app is Catholic Exorcism. The website is very simple: www.catholicexorcism.org. And go there. And you've got all sorts of prayers, videos, registrations, everything you could want, all things exorcistic.
All right. Monsignor Stephen Rossetti, thank you so much for coming on Finding Freedom.
God bless you and John and all those listening.
Thank you. All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode of Finding Freedom. And, not everyone who listens to my show is a Christian. Believes in, God, believes in good versus evil, and that's okay. That's fine. Hopefully, you were still able to take something away from this, maybe at least learn what other people believe, what people who are of the Catholic faith or the Christian faith, what they believe. So hopefully you found some value in that. Hopefully, in the very least, I hope you were entertained by it. But on a serious note, if you are of this belief, or if you're curious about, learning more about Christianity, hopefully this lit a spark, lit a little fire inside you, which is going to really drive that curiosity to really pursue and to learn more about this faith. If you're along that, if you want to pursue that path. If you don't, you know what? It's not your time. That's fine. Please consider joining our Lions of Liberty Pride. You can do so by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. We have bonus content. We have a show called Degenerate Gamblers. We have a show called Secrets, Lies, and Cover-Ups. We have Brian's Daily Show, which I will not say out loud on this show because it's not appropriate for a show where we just talk to a Catholic priest. But it's all entertaining stuff, and we do pour a lot back into our patrons. I think more so than any other, at least liberty-leaning, freedom-leaning podcast out there. So check it out if you like it. Join for as little as $5 a month. If you like it, stay a while. Maybe even bump up to a higher level and see the different access that you get. And there's nothing bad that can come from it. I promise. So thank you so much for your support. Thank you for listening. And hopefully everyone has a safe Halloween, a safe week, safe beginning, and a fun beginning to the month of November, kicking off into that holiday season. And I will talk to you all next week. In the meantime, always remember to keep your head up and the fire's liberty burning.